Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of Santa Cruz County, Crossroads of Cultures and Commerce. I'm Alex LaPierre, the principal historian for the exhibition project and also director of Borderlandia. And today on this edition, we're joined by an amazing guest. We have Hunter Claypatch, an archaeologist who focuses on the pre-colonial archaeology here in Nogales and Santa Cruz County. So Hunter, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get all the way here over to Nogales and end up discovering some amazing archaeological things here in the region?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me out here. I think this is an awesome little thing that you've got. Yeah, first of all, so I received my my PhD from Binghamton University, which is in upstate New York, actually. But my academic research was actually always kind of in the international border region, so kind of northern Sonora and extreme kind of southern Arizona. And I had started being doing professional archaeology about 10, 11 years ago in New Mexico. And it was actually during that time that I kind of realized that there wasn't a lot of people kind of talking about the archaeology of the borderlands. And so when it was kind of time for me to apply for graduate school, I was really kind of interested in kind of sharing the information that I had kind of learned during my travels to the borderlands and kind of expanding that more for my PhD research. So.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed that you really focus on is on public outreach as it regards to archaeological collections and investigations. What attracts you to that concept within archaeology?
Yeah, I mean, I think archaeology, people are interested in the past, right? I think people just generally are interested in the past, but unfortunately I feel like archaeology and archaeologists have historically been kind of gatekeepers for kind of information, and they haven't maybe always done the best in kind of disseminating that information and sharing it with the people that are maybe directly impacted by the research, the local community members and everything. So for me, it's really important to share that information with wider community members and to really get them engaged with kind of learning about the past in the areas that they live in.
Why do you think that's been the case, that there's kind of been this disconnect with the archaeological community and just the general public?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it actually kind of stems from, the origins of archaeology as kind of being this kind of colonial discipline, right? People come in and they take artifacts, and I mean, this starts, in Britain, and then certainly with kind of the colonial origins in the United States, and kind of taking artifacts from indigenous community members. And, I'd like to think that, moving into the 21st century and beyond, we're kind of moving beyond that and kind of incorporating more voices, right? Because the more people that we actually have within kind of the dissemination of archaeological knowledge, I think the better we all are. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've kind of worked on both sides of the border in archaeology. Could you speak a little bit about that, your experience?
Yeah. I mean, so I first started doing archaeological work down in Sonora in 2017. And so I'm engaged in a lot of binational projects with Centro Sonora and a lot of the archaeologists working down there. It's a really kind of dynamic area, and I think a lot of people actually don't bridge that kind of international border. And for me, it's something that's really important because academics and archaeologists kind of love to talk about how the border would have been, irrelevant in prehistory, right? But there's very few archaeologists that actually make the journey right south of the border and kind of, see what the world is like down there. And for me, it's really kind of important for disseminating information, whether it be, helping to translate articles, from English to Spanish or vice versa, or just, getting people from both sides of the border into a room and sharing information. Wow. That way. So yeah.
And has your love for archaeology come from since a young age, or was there a certain moment in time that you can say that, this is the path I want to take?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been really interested in the past, and I mean, when I was an undergraduate, actually, I pursued art history. So I was kind of visually oriented. My mother was actually an art history major, and my dad was an artist. So kind of that fine arts, art history background was really important to me. But it was, I think it was really kind of later on in my undergraduate that I started realizing that I was really interested in some of the early kind of pre-colonial artifacts and objects, and I started kind of aligning my interest more. Okay, maybe I'm a little bit more of an archaeologist than I am maybe an art history person, and so I actually dual majored when I was in undergraduate for that.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow, two great fields.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, what kind of sites have you worked on this side of the border here in southern Arizona?
Yeah, so in terms of like excavations and site, I've worked for several years now with Desert Archeology, and so they're a firm which is based primarily in Tucson and then up in Tempe. So there's excavations in the Tucson area that I've been a part of, and then up further north. But in terms of my own research, I've looked at a lot of collections from a lot closer to the international border here and here in Nogales, Santa Cruz County. A lot of those materials are housed in collections in the University of Arizona, and then also some of them are located at the Amarin Museum in Dragoon, Arizona. So I've spent a lot of time kind of reanalyzing some of those collections, which some of them were excavated, almost 100 years ago. And so kind of putting new, fresh eyes and fresh perspectives on some of those materials was, really important for me, and is kind of still something that I'm doing for ongoing research. But and then most kind of coming up in the next couple of months, I'm going to be reanalyzing collections that were excavated, pre-colonial collections that were excavated from Tumacacri. So that'll be a really kind of interesting and special thing from down here in Santa Cruz County. So
yeah. And you also are affiliated with education with Pima Community College as well?
Yeah. So I teach, currently I'm only teaching one class a semester, but I'm teaching an intro archaeology course at Pima Community College. And Pima Community College actually also has a really great public archaeology program. So people that are kind of interested in pursuing archaeology as a degree, it's a really great opportunity for them. And I've actually helped them with some of their analysis, ceramic analysis sections of some of their kind of more specialized courses that they have there as well. So
wow. And so on this Nogales Santa Cruz County exhibition that we're working on, you're going to be developing an exhibit on the pre-colonial archaeology of Nogales and the county. What are some of the most important things that the public should know about that subject, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the history of the archaeology in this region is really, really deep. And I mean, we have evidence of occupation in this area going back, at least 11,000 years. And a really kind of dynamic history about 1,200 years ago, which really is significant because it's kind of, this area was really kind of a corridor for the movement of people and ideas. People hear and talk a lot about the Hohokam tradition, which was kind of based in Tucson and in Phoenix. They extended down this way as well. And further south, you have the Trincheras tradition, which is the tradition that I specialize in. And kind of in this area between the Santa Cruz County, it's this kind of corridor of populations and innovations and resources that kind of fluidly moved across this border. And this is really represented in the material culture that you get from the archaeology down here. And also kind of all the kind of the rich dynamics that you get. So for me, this is a really special area because it really kind of mirrors what we see in the contemporary period of Nogales, right? It's this area where ideas and goods and innovations kind of transcend borders, and so to see this in the deep history of this, I think is a really kind of special thing to bring forward and to talk about with people.
Yeah, I think your exhibit in particular will be an important touchstone to kind of give the scope of the long legacy of this idea of interacting commerce, interacting cultures here in the region. And so we're also leveraging your talent and skills to work also with the students here, and also in kind of connecting them to the skills and abilities of an archaeologist. We talked about some programs potentially. What ideas do you have for working with the youth here in Santa Cruz County?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about and proposing is to work with the collections at the Pimaria Alta Historical Society, and they obviously have a really rich collection of pre-colonial artifacts, and to kind of work with that historical society and also high schoolers to kind of maybe bring their collections in terms of inventory and accessioning, and just kind of recognizing what the collections have, engaging high schoolers and kind of showcasing this historical society as a way for students to kind of learn more about their own local history. I think seems like a really kind of special opportunity. Mm-hmm. So.
And outside of archaeology, what do you like about Santa Cruz County? Is there anything in particular that always kind of calls you back here to this area beyond archaeology?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, kind of my interest and my passion with the past is kind of mirrored in the present, right? I mean, I see when I come down to Nogales and when I come down to Santa Cruz County, I see an area where ideas and innovations are kind of fluidly kind of moving across frontiers. And like I said, I mean, this is something that you get in the archaeological past. It's very clear in the archaeological past. And I think just kind of being in a space which is so kind of fluid in a sense is, I think is really important because it kind of contradicts these kind of narratives, right, that you get of borderlands and kind of these harsh borders, right? Ideas stop in these areas. But that was never the case in the past. And Nogales clearly demonstrates, right, that that's not the case, you know, in the present as well. So
yeah. And speaking of the present, you know, your work across the line has kind of brought you into kind of, you know, contemporary issues as well. You're also working to help migrants in northern Sonora. Can you speak a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, my partner and I, Juanita, we've actually been kind of engaged with migrant shelters really since I was spending some time doing my own dissertation research down in Sonora. But really it was when the pandemic hit that we kind of realized that you know, there was a lot of kind of issues in terms of resources that these migrant shelters had, and so we started actually organizing fundraisers and kind of regularly going down and you know, providing aid and resources down to these shelters. And you know, I mean, it's unfortunate that, you know, the media in the United States, right, portrays you know, migrants in a very kind of particular way, and I think, you know, kind of, you know, doing my own little part to just kind of counteract that narrative and really kind of provide aid and kind of shape that narrative in a new and kind of more productive way, I think is something that's really important for my partner and I.
Sure. And if the public want to aid in your efforts, where can you send them?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of so the fundraiser that my partner and I are part of. It's called Run for the Migrants, and so it's actually every year we have a fundraiser which kind of takes the form of a 5K run where people can donate and participate that way. But there's tons of other really important organizations kind of based in Tucson and the surrounding areas, and also further south. I mean, there's No Mas Muertes. There's a lot of really good organizations that you know, if you go on to the Run for the Migrants, you know, we're posting and sharing that kind of those pages, you know, quite regularly. And so there's a lot of different ways to donate.
Yeah, and to me, it's amazing here, you know, with the borderlands, you know, the intersection of, you know, so many different fields. You know, you might be working in archaeology, and you know, you're right next to Altar, which is one of the towns that receives the most migrants here in Sonora as well. So kind of, you know, bringing your work into the present as well too. Yeah.
And I mean, it's super. You bring up a great point. I mean, Altar is a corridor for people in the contemporary time, but it was also the same in the past, right? I mean, you look on the landscape, you look on the ground in Altar, and there's ceramics everywhere, right? This was a rich area for people to move across and to live and everything. And I think it's really kind of, you know, important to share that with people, you know, that, you know, what is happening in the present also happened in the past, and you know. So yeah.
And so you've had kind of also the, you know, this trajectory of school, study, research, and actually implementation in archaeology. What do you have anything to tell to the young people out there about, you know, that might be interested in pursuing this field? What are some of the things, you know, given your experience that you might want to put out there for the youth?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do. It doesn't come recommended enough. The program that Pima Community College actually has for people that are interested, kind of beyond high school, in getting a certificate. So they have an archaeology certificate program. I mean, that's a phenomenal way of kind of getting your feet wet and kind of understanding archaeology kind of on a broader level. But, you know, if you're even younger and are just kind of interested in archaeology, I mean, there's so many great sites that, you know, you can visit. I mean, the site of Tumacacri is certainly, you know, has a rich past, and it's not just a mission site, right? There's a rich pre-colonial past that's there. You know, even further north, you know, a lot of sites in Tucson and everything. And so this area is just, I mean, it's filled with history and the past. And I think once you kind of just start opening your eyes and kind of realizing and looking to the ground and seeing like what is there, I think, it just kind of opens up a whole new, kind of window of possibilities of learning about the past area that you live in. So. Truly.
And so if in your ideal world, what kind of archaeological outreach kind of resources would there be here in Santa Cruz County?
For me, I think, this community is so kind of interwoven within the contemporary international border. And I think kind of transcending that border, very much like the archaeology, and contemporary populations do, having, raising awareness, not just, on this side of the border, but also on the Sonoran side of Nogales and talking about that, because that's actually an area where there's been much less formal archaeological work on. So there's a lot of, cultural resource projects that have been going on really since the 1970s in Nogales on the Arizona side. But in the Sonoran side, there's been much less work. But obviously, there's really important sites there, and kind of exploring that and kind of documenting those, I think, is kind of what I see would be, great for kind of this wider community, to share.
Wonderful. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much today for the conversation, and I hope we can soon see you with the youth over at the P. Maria Alta Museum working on organizing and accessioning a lot of their great artifacts. But I want to say thank you to all of our viewers, too, as well. We appreciate your viewership, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Santa Cruz County, Crossroads of Cultures and Commerce.